Good afternoon, everyone. I am delighted to welcome you all to day 7 of our international webinar series celebrating World Breastfeeding Week 2024. This year, the theme is Closing the Gap Breastfeeding Support to All. This theme highlights the need for inclusive and comprehensive support system to ensure that all mothers have the necessary support for successful breastfeeding. I, Dr. Khushboo Dalwadi, welcome you all to today's session on the physiology of lactation. As we explore today's topic, we aim to understand the physiological mechanism of lactation, and it is my pleasure to introduce our speaker for today, Dr. Shonima Venugopal. Dr. Shonima has been working in the Department of Foods and Nutrition, Maharaja Sayajirao University, as assistant professor for past several years and has a number of publications to her credit. Now, let us welcome our esteemed speaker, Dr. Shonima Venugopal.
Thank you, Dr. Khushboo. Before I begin, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Department of Food and Nutrition, and especially Professor Vanisha for having given me this opportunity and for organizing this international webinar series. Such a great cause. So, today we'll be talking about physiology of lactation. Okay, so why are we talking about lactation? The normal physiology of lactation is a process that begins well before the initial latch of the newborn infant. And this process of lactation, it requires the breast to change in composition, size, and shape during each stage of the female development. So when we talk about development, it includes the stages of puberty, pregnancy, as well as lactation. And these stages of puberty, pregnancy, and lactation are influenced by a cascade of physiologic changes which are crucial to establishing successful breastfeeding. So there are different stages to this entire process of lactation. So the first stage is the stage of mammogenesis, which involves the development of the mammary gland, followed by the stage of lactogenesis, which talks about the process by which the mammary gland develops the ability to secrete milk. And then we have the actual process of milk production, that is the stage of lactation. So before we begin, we'll take a look at the significant parts of the breast. So like you can see here in this figure, I hope the cursor is visible, we have the nipple, and surrounding the nipple there is this dark skin which is called the areola. So it's important that the baby has a large amount of the areola in its mouth so that the baby can feed well. And you can see small bumps here on the area, which are called the Montgomery glands. So these are basically sebaceous glands which secrete an oily fluid that helps keep the area clean, lubricated, and because it secretes antibacterial substances, so it keeps it kind of healthy also for the infant. And then we have the alveoli. There are millions of alveoli in the breast, which are basically small sacs which secrete milk. So what we see here is an enlarged image of an alveolus. And so surrounding the alveolus, we have muscle cells or myoepithelial cells, which actually help in contracting the alveolus and secreting and squeezing the milk out. So other than this, we have the ducts, small tubes or ducts which begin as small ductules and which are responsible for carrying the milk from the alveoli to the outside. So the smaller ductules, they combine together to form 7 or 10 larger ducts which appear on the surface of the nipple. And between feeds, the milk is stored in the alveolus and the small ducts. So what happens is during feeding, the larger ducts which are beneath the areola, they dilate, and so for a temporary period of time, they can hold the breast milk during the feed. And surrounding the alveoli and the ducts, we have supporting tissue, the stroma, connective tissue, as well as fat. If we take a look at the cellular level, we find that the breast actually consists of two major structures. We have the ducts and the lobules. So here we can see a lobule, which is made up of a number of alveoli. And this is again just an enlarged image of an alveolus, where we can see the small ductules that are going to take the milk out of the alveolus. We have the milk secreting epithelial cells, and we have the myoepithelial cells, the muscle cells, which will help in contracting the alveolus. So when we talk about lobules, there are actually three types of lobules, type 1, 2, and 3, which form at different stages in a woman's development. So these lobules, they progressively increase in size as well as number, so that by the end of pregnancy, once the development is almost over, the breast is composed almost entirely of lobules with small amounts of the connective tissue of the stroma. And but however, only with the onset of pregnancy does the breast actually become mature, completely mature and functional. So here we can see how the mammary gland develops. So the postnatal development of the female mammary tissue actually takes place through several steps, which is under the control of hormones. So at birth, like we can see here, the mammary epithelium consists of limited number of ducts. So then when you move to the stage of puberty, because of high levels of circulating hormones like estrogen and progesterone, which stimulates the proliferation of the epithelial cells and the enlargement of the surrounding fat band. So, during the stage of puberty, the lobule type 1 is formed. Then, during each menstrual cycle, because of the changes in the level of estrogen and progesterone, it stimulates the lobule 1 to produce new alveolar buds, to develop and differentiate into new alveolar buds. And eventually they evolve to more mature structures, which are called the type 2 and type 3 lobules. However, once puberty is complete, until pregnancy, no further changes happen to the female breast. At the onset of pregnancy, which is the third portion, the third part of this diagram, the epithelial ducts, they further elongate, branch, new alveoli develop, and pregnancy is a stage where the stage 2 of mammogenesis takes place, which is occurring in response to high levels of progesterone. So what is happening in stage 2 is there is further development of the alveoli, maturation of the epithelium. So the increased volume of breast tissue that is seen during pregnancy is actually a result of the proliferation of the secretory tissue. And during early pregnancy, lobule type 3 is formed. Now, these newly formed lobules, the type 3, because type 1 developed in puberty, the type 3 ones, which develop during pregnancy, they have a larger size and they have more number of epithelial cells composing each acinus. So, acinus is actually the alveolus and the ductule. If you see that together, that's called an acinus, the plural of which is acinine. So, in late pregnancy, the proliferation of new acini reduces, and the lumen now becomes the lumen of the alveolus becomes distended with the secretory material or colostrum. During lactation, that's the next stage. During lactation, the mammary epithelium has now reached its maximal development, where it contains numerous alveoli which are producing huge amounts of milk. During the period of lactation, there's further growth and differentiation that is seen in the lobules, in the alveoli differentiation, along with milk secretion. But now the glandular component, the secretory component, the glandular component of the breast has reached to a point where it is mainly, like we mentioned previously, that it is now mainly composed of the glandular tissue and there is very little connective tissue of the stroma, which at this kind of stage persists throughout the lactation. Now, whenever the mother stops feeding the baby on weaning, whenever that is, whether it's at 1 year or 2 years, the milk production ceases. So the mammary alveoli, they will regress as a stage called involution, and the mammary epithelium reaches to, or it returns back to a non-pregnant state. So this kind of cessation of lactation requires a combination of lactogenic hormone deprivation and some local autocrine signals also. However, full regression or complete regression doesn't occur, and pregnancy causes a permanent increase in the size and the number of lobules. So When we talk about the period of the stage of lactogenesis, right now what we saw is how the mammary gland develops through puberty and pregnancy and lactation. So lactogenesis is the process how the breast now develops the ability to secrete milk. So this takes place in two phases or two stages. One is called the stage one lactogenesis, that is secretory initiation, which takes place during
Lactogenesis.
the second half of pregnancy. Now, in the second half of pregnancy, because the placenta is supplying high levels of progesterone, so it inhibits any further differentiation. Then we have the secretory activation stage, that is stage 2 lactogenesis, which starts
Yeah.
after delivery and it starts with copious milk production. So, because after delivery, with the removal of the placenta, there is a rapid drop in the levels of progesterone. And this drop in the levels of progesterone, along with the levels, elevated levels of other hormones like cortisol, insulin, and prolactin, they stimulate the stage of secretory activation. So, because of this secretory activation stage that happens after delivery, usually at day 2 or 3 of postpartum, most of the women they experience swelling in their breast because of the copious milk production that is taking place. So what we see here is again how the alveoli actually differentiate and mature. And we can see here that when we talk about the hormones, during pregnancy, progesterone and estrogen will play a predominant and major role. But when you move into the period of lactation, you can see it is now prolactin. Hormones like the progesterone levels have gone down and levels of prolactin have increased. So, which are the organ systems involved in the entire process of lactation? So, for normal lactation to occur successfully, it involves the female breast, the anterior lobe of the pituitary, as well as the posterior lobe of the pituitary. So, talking about hormones, because the entire thing is under the control of hormones, lactation is maintained by uh, regular removal of the milk and stimulation of the nipple. Now, why stimulation of the nipple? Because when the baby suckles at the breast, sensory impulses are being sent from the nipple to the brain. So, in response, what is happening when the brain gets the message? In response to that message, the anterior lobe of the pituitary will secrete the hormone prolactin, and the posterior lobe of the pituitary will secrete the hormone oxytocin. Now, although these two hormones are acting independently on different cellular receptors, however, their combined action is absolutely essential for successful lactation. So, what is this prolactin? Prolactin is a polypeptide hormone which is secreted by the lactotrophic cells in the anterior pituitary, and it mainly stimulates the mammary glands, ductal growth, and proliferation of the epithelial cells, and induces and helps in producing milk. So, like we just saw in the previous slide, when there is suckling of the nipple by the baby, the prolactin concentration increases because of the impulse, the message that has been sent to the brain. Because there are the nerve endings that are there in the nipple, they get stimulated, sending the message to the brain. So, the most important factor which actually regulates the levels of prolactin in the circulation is the emptying of the breast by the infant's suckling. So, this prolactin, like we said, is important to start the milk production and the synthesis of milk, and also in order to sustain the production of milk. The level of prolactin in the blood increases markedly during pregnancy, and it helps in development of the mammary tissue because it's preparing for the production of milk. However, the secretion doesn't start. You can't make the cells secrete milk because, like we mentioned before, progesterone and estrogen they block it because the levels of progesterone during pregnancy are very high. So progesterone inhibits or blocks the secretion of milk. But like we said, after delivery, when the levels, because the placenta is also removed, so after delivery, when the levels of progesterone decrease, the prolactin can now begin working. And it begins the milk production increase, it makes the milk production increase immediately after delivery. Now, the prolactin levels increase when the mother and the baby are skin to skin. So, which is why we talk about early initiation of breastfeeding, uh, possibly during the first hour of birth, which we refer to as the golden hour of life, because like you can see here, because of that skin to skin contact, not only is it helping the mother and the child bond, but it is also helping in increasing the levels of prolactin, which in turn will improve or increase the levels of the production of milk. So after 2 to 3 days, the mother will notice her breast feeling full, which is referred to as the milk coming in. The prolactin has started acting and the milk production has gone up. So there's a lot of prolactin. Most of the prolactin is in the blood after about 45 minutes after the feed. So what is the purpose of the increase after 45 minutes is to help the breast continue producing milk after the feed to be ready for the next feed. So for the current feed, the baby is going to consume or take the milk which is already present in the breast, the milk which is stored in the lumen of the alveoli and the smaller ducts. Also, more prolactin is produced at night when the mother is more relaxed, and therefore breastfeeding at night is very helpful for keeping the milk supply higher. And it should be promoted. Mothers should be asked to feed their babies in the night at night so that prolactin production can take place and the milk production is sustained. Prolactin also helps the mother feel relaxed and sometimes sleepy, so she can usually rest well even if she breastfeeds at night. So basically, in the first months, the first few months after delivery, the milk production is actually adjusting to the baby's needs. So the baby has to continue to suckle for the mother to increase her milk supply. So if the baby doesn't suckle enough, the prolactin levels will fall because the impulse is not going to the brain enough, and the prolactin levels will fall, which in turn will affect the production of the milk. So the breast will then make lesser amount of milk. So that is why we said that the milk production is actually adjusting to the baby's needs. The more the baby suckles, the more will be the prolactin production, and the more will be the milk synthesis. The other hormone that we mentioned that is getting released from the posterior pituitary is oxytocin, which is involved in the reflex called the oxytocin reflex, also known as the milk ejection reflex or the letdown reflex. So the same thing happens because of the baby suckling at the breast, because of that tactile stimulation. It leads to signals being sent to the hypothalamus, which is triggering the release of oxytocin. So basically, what is oxytocin doing? If prolactin is increasing the synthesis of milk, oxytocin is helping release that milk, or it is helping the myoepithelial cells contract and thus pushing out the milk that is stored in the lumen of the alveoli and in the ducts. So the contraction of the myoepithelial cells forces the milk out from the ducts, from the alveolar lumen, and out to the milk. The oxytocin hormone also has a psychological effect, which can induce a state of calm, reduce stress in the mother, and also enhance the feelings, the bond between that the mother and the child share, enhancing the feelings of affection between the mother and the child. So, like we said, oxytocin is actually helping in releasing the milk. So when the oxytocin reflex or the letdown reflex works, the larger ducts beneath the areola, they start increasing in size because they're filling with milk. So sometimes the milk may even flow to the outside surface. So oxytocin is basically helping the baby get the milk easily. So if prolactin was preparing for the next feed, oxytocin is making the milk in the breast flow for the current feed, for the current this feed. And oxytocin can start working way before the baby actually suckles at the nipple. Even when the mother expects to breastfeed, or even when if the baby is during suckling also. So some other benefits that oxytocin has is that it helps the mother's uterus to contract after delivery and can help reduce bleeding. But there are sometimes it is possible that the contractions cause a lot of pain, which could be quite strong and are referred to as after pains. So it is absolutely essential, and this should be taken as an opportunity to counsel the mother and the caregivers that they shouldn't be worrying about this process and they should continue the breastfeeding. So because oxytocin helps the mother bond with her child, makes her love her baby, it's also sometimes called as or referred to as the love hormone. So because of this precise reason, in mothers who bottle feed their babies, the levels of oxytocin would be much lower. Because of this, they may not have the same feelings as compared to the mothers who breastfeed their babies. And the oxytocin reflex, it actually becomes conditioned to the mother's sensation, to the mother's feelings. Like when she hears her baby cry, when she sees her baby, or she's actually just thinking about her baby, smelling her baby, touching her baby. So such positive feelings can make her feel happy. Whenever she's happy and thinking about her baby and she's feeling confident, it can help the oxytocin reflex to work. On the contrary, feelings like pain, worry, doubt, if she's experiencing pain from her nipples, her sore nipples, or because of the delivery, because of the contractions, or if she's doubting whether she has enough breast milk, or if she's emotionally upset, or she's under acute stress or trauma, all these can hinder the oxytocin reflex, and then the flow of milk reduces because the oxytocin levels go down. It can stop she may actually have a lot of doubt. She may be worried that her breasts have stopped producing milk. So it is not so. The breasts are producing milk, but it is not flowing out. So fortunately, this kind of an inhibition is quite temporary and can easily be overcome. So it is crucial that the mother receives that kind of support from those who are around her. She should be made to feel comfortable. She should be counseled, and the baby should be allowed to continue to breastfeed, because only if the baby breastfeeds, only if the baby suckles at the nipple, the oxytocin reflex will work and the milk will flow again, which is why it is so important that the baby and the mother should be kept together so that they have that kind of skin to skin contact, and those factors that we mentioned previously, the smell of the child, the sight of the child, the touch, the tactile state, the tactile feeling, the touch that the mother gets, all that can help in oxytocin reflex. So, which is why a mother needs to have her baby near her all the time so that she can see her baby, touch her baby, and respond to her baby. So, that's going to help both the prolactin production as well as the oxytocin reflex. So, if we separate the baby from the mother, her oxytocin reflex may not work as easily, which is why, reiterating the point, why it is important to start the breastfeeding within the first hour, that golden hour of life. So, see, how one talks to the mother can also affect the flow of the breast milk. It's absolutely essential to make the mother feel supported, to build her confidence, to remove any doubts that she has regarding breast milk production. And it's very, and like, it is important not to criticize her, not to say anything that may make her doubt her ability to produce breast milk. So if the mother is relaxed, help the mother feel relaxed, get comfortable for the feeds so that successful breastfeeding can be established. The mother may actually notice some signs that show that the oxytocin reflex is active. Signs like a tingling sensation in the breast before or during a feed, the milk flowing from her breast when she thinks of the baby or hears the baby crying, or milk flowing from the other breast when the baby is suckling, slow deep sucks by the baby and swallowing by the baby, which shows that the milk is actually flowing into the baby's mouth, some uterine pain. So if any one or more of these signs are present, it reflects that the reflex is working. However, if these signs are not present, it doesn't mean that the reflex is not active. They may just not be obvious to the mother. She may not be aware of these signs, but it doesn't mean that the oxytocin reflex is not working. So there are three other reflexes which are related to suckling seen in the baby. There's the rooting reflex, we have something called the sucking reflex, and the swallowing reflex. So these reflexes, the rooting reflex, the sucking reflex, and the swallowing reflex, they happen automatically in a healthy baby. So, however, taking the breast far enough into the baby's mouth is not completely automatic. See, for these reflexes to happen correctly, it is important that the attachment of the baby and to the mother's breast has to be correct. And in one of our previous webinars, Dr. Shruti Kantawara elucidated how the proper attachment should be. So the baby should be held close to the breast and should approach the breast from underneath the nipple so that these reflexes actually happen correctly. So what is a rooting reflex? When something touches a baby's lips or their cheek, the baby turns its head towards it, and the baby will then open its mouth, especially if the upper lip is touched. So this is called the rooting reflex. So what is the baby actually rooting for? The baby is actually rooting for the nipple of the breast. So the baby is expecting the breast, which is why the baby is opening the mouth. Then there is the sucking reflex. So when something touches the baby's palate, they start to suck that. So this is called the sucking reflex. So when the mother moves the open-mouthed baby closer to the breast so that the nipple touches the soft palate of the baby's mouth, it stimulates the baby's sucking reflex. And the third reflex is that of the swallowing reflex, where when the baby's mouth fills with milk, they swallow the milk, which is called the swallowing reflex. So, like I mentioned previously, for all these reflexes to work properly, it's very important that the attachment has to be correct. So, most of the healthy term infants can attach themselves to the breast instinctively in the first hour after birth, which is why, again, initiating the breastfeeding during the first hour is so crucial. The mother and the baby have to be kept together in a comfortable, supportive environment, which will help these reflexes. See, if the attachment is not correct, or if there are uncomfortable, the baby and the mother are in an uncomfortable position, it can actually inhibit the reflex. So the mothers need to be taught how to avoid such uncomfortable positions, how to make it easier for the baby to suckle effectively. So, how does the milk production or the lactation actually cease, or how does it stop? So the milk itself contains different factors in order to control or inhibit the production of milk. So the simple logic is if the milk is not removed, the intramammary pressure that is elevated on this while because of the intramammary pressure that keeps getting elevated because the milk is not getting removed and because of the accumulation of an inhibitor which is called the feedback inhibitor of lactation, the milk production goes down and it initiates the stage of mammary involution. So if breast milk is removed, the levels of the inhibitor will go down and the secretion will resume. So the role of the feedback inhibitor is to regulate the amount of the milk that is being produced, which in turn is determined by the amount of milk that the baby actually takes and in turn related to the amount of milk that the baby needs. So if the baby suckles at the breast, the inhibitor levels would go down, the milk production would resume. If the baby doesn't take the milk, if the feeding stops, then the inhibitor levels will increase, and along with the accumulated levels of the inhibitor, the elevated pressure, intramammary pressure, will make the milk secretion go down. So, just before we conclude milk production, when we talk about milk production, it's a give and take process. The mother's body will make as much milk as the baby drinks. So, for the mother to produce enough milk, it's essential that her baby must suckle often and remove the milk because her breasts are going to respond to the baby's needs. The breast will produce as much milk as the baby needs. So, in order to remove and transfer the milk to the baby efficiently, it's necessary for the baby to suckle effectively. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shonima Venugopal, for your informative presentation. Dr. Shonima discussed about significant parts of the breast physiology and different developmental stages. She also discussed the physiological changes occurs in the mammary gland in different stages. Dr. Shonima well explained the different stages of lactogenesis, and she also explained the hormonal regulation of lactation with highlighting the roles of prolactin and oxytocin in milk production and milk ejection. Dr. Shonima well explained and emphasized the importance of different reflex of baby like suckling reflex, rooting reflex and swallowing reflex with the importance of mother's psychological state. The insight into the physiology of lactation provided us a deeper understanding of this vital process, which is a give and take process for both the baby and the mother. Now, ma'am, we have some questions for you. And the first query is: does the size of breast during the lactation period affects the milk production?
Okay, that's a very relevant question. So, there are many women who feel that because they have smaller breasts, their breasts will not be able to produce enough milk. However, whether the woman has a large breast, or a smaller breast, the amount of glandular tissue remains the same. It is only the amount of fat and the connective tissue of the stroma which is actually giving the breast its shape, and that is what is different between a smaller and a larger breast. So it may be possible that women with smaller breasts, they may the amount of milk that is stored in their breast between feeds could be lesser as compared to women with larger breasts. And so, in case of women with smaller breasts, the baby may need to feed more often, but if you look at it in a day, the overall production of milk is going to be the same in women with smaller breasts and in women with large breasts because they have the same amount of glandular tissue. I hope that answers your question. Dr. Khushboo, I think you're on mute. Could you unmute yourself? I can't hear you.
Okay, sorry. We have another query. Could you please explain the physiological basis of the breast crawl in newborns?
Okay, so like in my presentation, I was talking about the principal structures, the principal parts, significant parts of the breast. I did mention the Montgomery glands. So the Montgomery glands are actually sebaceous glands which are secreting an oily fluid, and like I mentioned, they help keep the area clean and healthy. So along with keeping the area clean and healthy, these Montgomery glands, they also the oily fluid that these glands are secreting, they give a particular smell or an aroma in case of the baby to the mother's breasts. So it is that smell that the baby uses to recognize the mother's breast, and which is why when you place the baby on the mother's abdomen, the baby is easily able to find its way to the mother's breast, something which we call as the breast crawl. And the baby's then, that's why it's so, like again, reiterating that it's essential to initiate that early contact and establish that bond between the mother and the child right in that first hour of birth, because the baby can figure out where the mother's breasts are and start feeding.
Thank you, Dr. Shonima Venugopal, for the wonderful discussion. Now, as we conclude today's webinar, I want to express my appreciation to our Dean, Faculty of Family and Community Science, Professor Dr. Anjali Pahad ma'am, for her unwavering support. A heartfelt thank you to Professor Dr. Mini Shade, in charge head of the Department of Foods and Nutrition, Faculty of Family and Community Science, Maharaja Sayajirao University, for your guidance and encouragement. I also want to express my appreciation to Professor Dr. Vanisha Nambiar, our coordinator and professor of the Department of Foods and Nutrition. Your contribution has been instrumental in the success of this event. Special thanks to the organizing committee and all the support staff who have worked tirelessly behind the scenes to make this webinar series a success. Let us continue to work together to promote the support breastfeeding practice, ensure the healthier future for our communities. Stay tuned for our daily webinar series. Thank you all once again for joining us and have a great day.
Thank you so much for having me.